to get a full attendance of everyone here tonight, and we may have to follow up anyway with, well, we will have to follow up anyway with a survey of anybody who has been on the study group. So, Rob, do you want to go ahead with the welcome and
Yeah, sure. So welcome everybody. I don't know, I lost count of the number of installments we've had, but this is the April, Wiehle Avenue Pedestrian Crossing Study Group. And we, prior to this meeting, we did send out what I would just call a draft of potential questions and that we do want to talk about tonight to see if we're heading in the right direction, to see if this is helping to capsulize the group's thoughts. I mean, in one way, we're still trying to answer questions that have been asked of us on some specifics to various options, and then in other ways, the idea of the draft questions was to allow individuals to add their own content as well. So that was the kind of the thought behind it. So I think where we left last meeting, there was a lot of discussion about where we should be, where we are, and Supervisor Alcorn was on the call, and basically his directive was the study group needs to make sure we wrap up by the end of the summer in order to meet other timelines, in order to get information to the board by October, is what I recall.
Sure. I'm going to pick up here. Is that okay, Rob, or did you have other thoughts?
You go ahead, Lori.
Okay. So first, I really would like to address last month's meeting and thank everybody for their input. It was a bit of a difficult meeting with free-flowing conversation and concerns that were being brought to the forefront. And it was a little frustrating at times, but I was particularly impressed with this group's civility and willingness to listen to each other and to hear different points of views. And it gave me some time to rethink a lot of the issues. I in particular want to thank Walter, who's not here tonight, but he consistently focused us his desire for us to give him feedback. Whether or not what kind of feedback he didn't specify that it had to be a certain kind, but he really wanted to know, for us to give his feedback, as you said, Rob, in a timely fashion. Mike was an attendee at that meeting, and he really said, hey, can we focus on our values and why this task is so important? And that question from an attendee also made me think about this issue that we're studying. Jennifer also brought up and tried to help us reimagine the best solution that would serve everyone, which again was from just a completely different corner. And of course, Rob, my co-chair, for really calmly taking over this situation and listening and making sure everyone's voice was heard. I was a bit mired in frustration at the time and wasn't able to articulate what I was thinking. And so I really appreciate you stepping in, Rob, and sort of just handling the discussion. But most of all, just for everybody who was just kind, civil, expressing your opinions, attacking the problems, and not the people. So that is the way a group should work together. And I just was very appreciative of how we did that. And that follows all the ground rules that we have stuck to. Beginning with when we start and end our meetings, 7 to 9. If we finish early, then we'll leave early and everybody will get some time back. And if you've got questions or issues after this, of course, you all know the email addresses there on the agenda. And that is really brings us to number 3, kind of a summary of what we've been doing to date. Rob, do you want to touch on that, or do you want to jump right into survey questions? Do you want to do a brief overview, or do you think everybody has that?
Well, I think for the most part, everybody kind of knows the summary of where we've come to date and looking at the options. I did want to just say, I know it's based on some of the feedback we got from some of the last meetings. There is general frustration that we all would like more information. We all would like more data. We all would like a lot more dialogue about other things that are going on. And as we kind of talked a little bit last meeting, there's plenty more to come in the corridor and other studies that are going to come after us. And unfortunately, the timing is going to be such that we're not going to have the benefit of some of that information. And so that frustrates all of us. But it kind of is what it is. So, I know some folks would want to continue to try to continue to get more data, which is perfectly fine. And then others have said, gee, I think we have enough information, and I think we'd like to try to start wrapping things up. So tonight, I was hoping that the reason we sent out these questions was trying to show everybody maybe how the questions could be formed and have been formed to date, so that there would be some direct answers to some of the questions we've been asked to answer. And then again, there would be an area for embellishment by each one of us. And the idea behind that was those answers would be then given to the board verbatim. There wouldn't be editing involved. There wouldn't be summary. It would just be given to them so they could see the ideas that everybody has, the passion that everybody has for this, and just kind of hear us all out. Because as Walter Alcorn said originally, he's not looking for one vote. He's not looking for just one idea to come out of this group. He's just looking for all our input. So I think what would be great tonight, I think, is to hear from everybody on the committee, one way or another, and just kind of go down through and hear some good feedback from everybody, see if we're on the right track, see what else other input you think may or may not be helpful, but it has to be in the same context of getting to the end of this by the end of the summer. And let's see kind of where we arrive at here after the discussion tonight.
That sounds like a good place to start. But that is not something 100% that is on the agenda as I see it written. Rob,
Well, it's number four on the agenda, the discussion of the draft questions.
draft questions. Okay, so that's what you're getting at when you talk about discussion. Okay, so let's, Jose, can you pull up not the red line. Well, you can pull up the red line first to show people where we started. And then we can pull up this is sort of the modified version, trying to keep it very clean, very, trying to make sure none of the questions are leading questions. None of them are misdirected. I think we had Michelle point out, who is a PR specialist, that some of the things like, do you support the installation of a high visibility crosswalk at ADA curb ramps, and those type of adjectives tend to lead the person to answer the question a certain way, when what we're really asking is a very straightforward question. Is that crosswalk across Wiehle at the Dulles intersection, are you in favor or not in favor? So that was the thinking behind kind of paring down that question. And I don't know if you can flip right back to the other one, Jose, to show people the difference was we had decided at our rather outspoken meeting last time that we would say who we are, so that this, I think, gives context to Walter as to who his constituents are and which ones, if it's a developer saying something, and I know the developers said they wouldn't put their names, they wouldn't do the survey, but I actually think they should do the survey. I know that's countering what the group originally thinks, and I think Mark should do the survey. I think everyone should do the survey because everybody's been here. And you should say who you are and you should fill this out and you should say why. And the reason for that is because, and I know you said you won't, so if you do what you want, but if Walter is looking at his community, it's really good to know your developers are thinking this, your community's thinking this, your staff are thinking this, and to allow him and the Board of Supervisors to say, okay, this is what I think is going on. And so, and to make their own decision that way. I just think it's very transparent and open. And so this question got revamped after you put your name and your address on here, right? The address, of course, is important because if you're a Reston resident, obviously you're going to be a little more passionate and you might attend a lot more board meetings. Question number one, do you support the installation of a crosswalk with pedestrian and traffic signals across Wiehle at the Dulles toll road ramps? Yes, no, or abstain? Can we get a feeling from the group and we can go around in a circle? Rob, how would you like to do this? Just go around in a circle, have everybody weigh in on that question if there's any issues with it? Or just raise a hand if you, maybe that's the easier way.
Uh, Lori, I guess I had in mind we're just going down each person and have them get. They've been sent these questions before, and just get their reaction to all of them at once, and to see if we're on the right track on a one-to-one basis.
Is that okay with everybody? Can I see? Yeah, that's okay. I don't want to put any one person on the spot to do the whole thing at the beginning. And then sometimes it's hard when you do it that way, Rob, just because one person has to lead off and kind of show that they've read everything. And this gives people a little bit more time if they didn't have time to read it. So it's just two different ways of doing it, and I'm fine with either way. One puts people on the spot, but
Let me try this, Lori, because I think I'm interested in getting everybody's opinions in a lot more voices from some of the other people in the group. I'm going to put Bruce right on the spot, and I'm just going to say, Bruce, can you give us your reaction to these questions and see if we're on the right track?
Sure. And I was going to make a comment that I think by doing it the way you suggested, that we'll all have an opportunity to comment on all the questions after we hear what others have said, and hopefully we would have a second chance to weigh in. My one concern about several of the questions, other than question one, is the abstain option. For example, question two, do you support the construction of one of the preferred bridge options? And then the answers are, I prefer one bridge option, or I prefer, the developer's contribution to be used to pay for a portion of another alternative. And the last would be abstain. Someone could say, I don't prefer any of the bridge options. And I don't know if there's another option besides the developer's contribution. But yeah, that actually, in looking at this more closely, that the second option does kind of get at the no, I don't prefer any bridge options. But I don't know, maybe it would be good to have a free form comment, but then that would complicate the interpretation of the survey. But in some of the others, say question three, bridge option one, two, or A, B, or C, or none of the above rather than abstain. Because abstain means to me, either I don't have opinion or I don't care to weigh in on this question. But for three, I would say I prefer none of the bridge options.
Yeah, Bruce, that you raise a good point. Maybe I think maybe the intent of abstaining was kind of more of none of the above, or I don't really agree with the prior two answers, and maybe none of the above maybe captures it a little bit better than the word abstain.
Okay. I see Tammy has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, I have to open up my chat room here. Hold on.
This is Tammy. I would like to notice and acknowledge the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that none of the bridge options, according to what we were told by Cornerstone last time, we know engineering wise, for multiple reasons, none of them are buildable. And we asked Cornerstone, would you make the drawings that you submitted into buildable things? And they said no. And so I don't know why we've been voting on this if it can't be built. That is to me something that has to be.
Tammy, you said that last time. That's not something we've ever said.
Okay, well, can you clarify then what your position is, Ken?
I don't necessarily agree that they're not buildable. I think that's stuff we'd have to study in the future.
Okay, but the presentation the group got was that there were sightline problems. The code, they weren't wide enough. The actual bridge itself wasn't wide enough. That VDOT wouldn't let the elevator tower be on VDOT property, and that's where your drawing has it located.
Yes, VDOT will have to agree to it, and there'll be a lot of work that has to happen with that, and they're not going to do that work until we get into it with them.
So if I may, Tammy, you bring up a really good point. And 3 meetings ago, it, it was a misstatement, I believe, on Ken's part, or maybe it was Brian, that they weren't going to build the bridges as the consultant had indicated they needed to do to bring them even up to code. That was the point at the very last meeting where I was very frustrated and was confused because it felt disingenuous and it didn't feel, it felt almost nefarious that a developer would come with bridges that couldn't be built, right? So that is the elephant you're talking about. What Ken means, and I believe what Walter indicated, was that in the process of doing this, if a bridge was selected, if the community felt strong enough about one of the bridge options, then there would have to be a lot of give and take. There's going to be give and take when a developer starts working on a project. And I think that is where Ken was going with it. So I don't believe there was anything disingenuous, but that is how it felt to me as a community resident. But there has to be, after that happens, after we decide it's going to be A, then there's going to be some time that TF Cornerstone has to go back to RA and ask for, or the X, Y, or Z. And at those times is where we have a little bit more flexibility, and where the bridge can be built the way it needs to be built, or there's some partnering on it and they don't share so much of the cost. So there's a lot of ways to work through those issues. I don't know all of them. That's not my area, but I believe, Ken, can you speak to that a little bit more? Do I have that correct? Is he still here?
Ken, I think you're muted.
about that.
There you
Yes, as we understand it, and according to all of our, team, the bridges were designed to meet code. Yes, they will require cooperation from multiple parties, on different options. That could be Comstock, that could be VDOT. VDOT has this really antiquated line, imaginary line that would need to be vacated. They can vacate that just by doing that. But until that is vacated, they were making the point that it needs to be vacated for that bridge to be built. There's nothing that says it can't be, but we need to get there.
I'm, if I may also for a second, it's Brian. Want to just sort of remind everybody that the concept that our team had in mind for the bridge was to be modeled off of, something like the bridge at the Reach at the Kennedy Center. And that bridge, admittedly, looks very different from the bridges that the consultants identified and used some examples of different bridges with, like street lights on them or bollards that you could protect from having a car drive across the bridge. The bridge at the Reach at the Kennedy Center is not wide enough for a car to drive across, so there's no need for a bollard. And it seems that if there are, VDOT requirements or other, protocols that are in place that would prevent that type of bridge from being constructed at this location, then that's unfortunate and something that I don't think anyone on our team was, aware of during the processing of the rezoning application. But just to, remind everybody that that was the concept for the bridge. It wasn't a, super wide bridge with streetlights and a lot of other things that the consultants identified. Whether those things are required or not required, I think that's worth exploring in more detail if in fact the task force or study group is interested in one of the bridge options. I don't think that's a foregone conclusion that every single element of the bridges that the consultants identified would have to be included in a bridge.
Thanks, Brian. Fiona has had her hand up for a while. Let me go to Fiona real quick.
Yeah, this is Fionnuala. I want to, it actually really bothered me that we actually didn't pause the last time to discuss this further. What this is, I think, fundamentally about is that some people on the group have familiarity, deep familiarity with the engineering process and how it works, and some do not. And a lot of what engineering is about presentation of information. And it gets presented at different levels. And it costs a whole lot of money to prepare the type of information that gets presented at each of those levels. We are before the engineering project. We're not in the design stage. We're in the pre-discussion stage. Engineers can't spend tons and tons and tons of money and time and all sorts of stuff designing. They didn't do that for this because they can't. That money isn't there. They don't do that until it's further on in the process. So instead, what we were shown were concepts. Concepts are unbuildable. So I think that they're concepts. That's what they are. They are always at this stage of a major project. They never are buildable. They can't be because the work hasn't been done by the engineers. There will be no unbuildable design. Nobody would ever allow that to happen. Nobody wastes their money on unbuildable stuff. And when the time comes, there will be a process and the engineers will spend a ton of time and a ton of energy and a ton of money following every single set of guidelines, which will be coming at them from all different directions. And they have to meet them. They're not allowed to build without meeting them. And they will be going through endless approvals. But that is work. And that is work that we're not at that stage. You don't do that work until you're in that phase of the project. Instead, we were shown concepts. And they're pretty detailed. They're more detailed than the public would normally get to see at this stage. And what happens with all concepts, once people, you can talk about, say, oh, I want to build a bridge across here. Then when you draw the concept, It exposes some of the issues. That's what that process is. And that's what we did. And that's the valuable information we got out of that process. And they were pretty detailed, and that's why we came up with some stuff. And that's valuable information that we should be passing along. And we can get into like specific discussions about bollards and stuff like that, but we're not going to be having a useful conversation, because ultimately there's going to be a very detailed design process, and whatever little design detail we spend our time on, that's not going to be the center of what they do. They're going to be meeting all the requirements. What we have to step back and say, this is a concept, think hard about the concept and figure out if that's the way we want to move forward. I think it's important, if you haven't seen a lot of these projects, and people may not know, I too am an engineer, and you get used to this and you don't realize that other people aren't as used to how it works. There are multiple steps, and this is the step we're at, and we're privileged to be able to get this close to that step. And the value is what we're pointing out. So I hope that will be helpful to people. There will be no unbuildable design. That just doesn't, nobody does that. Doesn't happen.
So that's helpful, but I think what would be more helpful is if we can get confirmation from Ken and or Brian that they will fund the bridge options, even if there are changes.
I think that's where the confusion came in last time, Michelle.
It's a simple question. I mean, if there are changes that are necessary to make these bridges workable, will you make those changes? It's that simple.
So I will say, and Ken, jump in if you'd like as well, but we don't know what the scope of those changes are. So, if the consensus of the study group is to have a significantly different bridge, then that's not the concept that we had in mind. If there's some level of, refinement of these.
It's not about what we say. It's about what Comstock and VDOT says. And so as you've proposed them, there are other parties that have a say in this. And we have heard that those other parties will not approve what you have proposed. So if they have changes that you need to make this work with code, to make it work with Comstock, are you going to make those changes?
I think we need to know what the scope of those changes would be. I think that is fair.
So Brian, I want to let Jennifer weigh in here for a minute, but before I do, Brian, I think what a lot of the committee is reacting to is FCDOT had a consultant, and the consultant had highlighted some specific deficiencies in some of the layouts that they weren't preferences or things. It was just they had called out attention to width of some of the bridge options, and some of the locations of piers and things were going to have to be modified. So I think it's that those are the more things that that FCDOT's consultant had raised that I think caused alarm to the group, and I think that's what most of this is related to. And I realize there were not direct specifics, so where you could quantify exactly what but there were a handful of things that they had identified that I think this group is concerned about whether or not those would be taken care of in the ultimate final design of the process. Let me, before you answer, let me go to Jennifer here real quick.
Thanks everyone for your comments. I just want to say that we're not at conceptual, because these are final development plans. I understand there's processes after that, site plan and all of that, and things that can change, but we are definitely not at conceptual. These are approved final development plans, which I think that some of us in the community have studied and have walked through this process for years with this development. So that's why you're probably hearing what you're hearing, because same thing with question 1, we have memos from VDOT saying they're not going to approve a crosswalk at the toll ramp. So it's very perplexing for us to go through a questionnaire when we don't believe that some of these are even options. But my question goes back to when I emailed the Wiehle Pedestrian listserv over a week ago and asked, and I didn't get a reply, is, are we going over a questionnaire tonight that's a final questionnaire? This is the one that's going to Walter? Or what I believe we agreed to at the last meeting was that we were going to take a straw poll of the people that participate repeatedly in this group. And get a feeling for where people were, that we were not at final. And the other thing that I believe that we agreed to last time is after doing a straw poll was to take a stab at imagining what Wiehle might look like, so that we can give some of that feedback to Walter, since he was encouraging us to do that. And so I was disappointed to not see that on the agenda at all, because those are the two things I thought we agreed to at the last meeting.
So Jennifer, let me just respond to that real quickly, and then Lori's trying to get us moving along here, which I don't disagree with. So I think what we're trying to do here is decide tonight if is this line of questioning getting us in the right direction, and do we have some comments to be made from it to in whatever if we would call this a straw poll or just kind of a review of the draft questions. Are we heading in that right direction? The discussion that took place about other information and other ideas along Wiehle Avenue. I mean, we also talked about that there's another study that's going to happen, and that study's not been funded yet. And there's some other things that are also delaying transportation studies along Wiehle because of the metro still being closed. And so, I mean, I'm happy to talk about other ideas, but I'm not sure that we're going to get any new information in order to have that as a part of our group. And that's kind of what we were discussing last time, is the limitation on the information that's going to come to us in the time we need it.
Right, but I think that we agreed that we would take a stab at imagining, and if we are at conceptual, as some people are saying, then imagining would be conceptual as well. So we're not necessarily, as everyone knows, going to get the studies, but imagining doesn't require the studies either.
Jennifer, you bring up a lot of really great points. I was personally against the straw poll, and so I didn't remember to put it on the agenda, and it should have been. So I apologize for that. And I loved the idea of reimagining the intersection so much, because it seems as though we are just a small piece of this entire process to reinvent that whole intersection that needs to be holistically looked at. So I don't see any reason why we can't do three things. We might not get to them all, but the three things that I would say is, if we could go through these questions just one at a time, and just see if this or do a straw poll first, and then go through the questions, and then maybe and then reimagine what our ideal intersection would look like if you could do it on your own, because that's actually where I've been spending a lot of my time. And then go back to the questions and revisit them and say, do they still make sense now that we've talked about this? And here's what we're feeling about the what the developer has put forth, and here's what we think we should be doing for Reston. So I think we could do them all. I'm not 100% sure what order, but I do think if we do the questions tonight, we will have to revise them after we do a little more thinking on this. And I would challenge everybody to do some hard thinking on, if you're going to live here, what do you want your future to look like, and what do you want your kids' future and future generations to look at? Um, so can we get a sense from the group? Does everybody know how to like raise your hand? Can we use that function in this?
Lori, I have a couple baseline questions about what you're proposing. Could I ask them, please?
Sure.
You're referencing intersection. Which one, and in my mind, there are two, and there possibly may be more, depending on which bridge option. We've got a crosswalk at the Dulles. I think we're pretty set on what's happening at the intersection of Wiehle and Sunrise. And then we have a potential change coming forward with Comstock if they're going to proceed, and they have put in a development or an application on their west side for having a lane, a turn in, right out on their project. So we've got some complications here, but we need to define exactly when we speak what we're speaking about. Thank you.
I agree. I guess I was going with the holistic idea of what I believe Walter spoke about it. And I know Jennifer invited us to sort of get to it. But if you and maybe this is not the right time, but I'm just going to do it anyway, and y'all can put me on mute and not listen to me if you don't want to. But Jose, would you pull up the picture that I sent you this afternoon? Do you have it?
Let me look in my email box. Give me a
Okay. If not, you could allow me to share my screen. I want to show you what I'm talking about specifically, Tammy, because it's not just our little section over here in it, on this side of Wiehle. I mean, on this side of Sunrise and so ideally, we would start with on this whole project of reimagining what the intersections would look like with values, the ones that Reston was founded on, that we live, work, and play in the same area. They're the reasons Reston was voted as Money Magazine's #1 place to live in the nation if you work from home. It's, we were voted one of the 15 biophilic cities in the United States. I envision that it's a sunny Friday morning and I'm going to walk up Upper Lake Drive towards TF Cornerstone and Campus Commons, and I'm going to drop off my prescription at the drugstore there. And then I'm going to grab a coffee at an outdoor cafe with my friend who lives in their high rise. And after coffee, we're going to go walk through the tunnel to our offices on the Comstock property. At lunch, I'm going to look for a new blouse at the retail shops that are right below the offices of the Comstock property. And some afternoons I take the metro to DC for an in-person meeting with my employer. But on my return, I pick up bread and cheese at the outdoor metro market that's right there. At the end of the day, I walk back through the tunnel and I meet my friends for some outdoor event that TF Cornerstone's having, and they're sponsoring in their Hillside Park. We sit on a blanket, more friends come and join us with fruits and drinks, and there's a lunch truck that drives up and serves folks. All around us, people from different walks of life have picnic blankets, wheelchairs, bikes. People are coming from all over Reston. There's cafes, there's wine shops, drugstores, there's even a small grocery store, just integrated into both the properties. But, after the concert, everybody walks home or goes on their scooter or their bike safely home. And it's not just our corner. I see it extending to the Wiehle Sunset area. I mean, there's going to be movie theaters in there. And why wouldn't we want to walk across, in yellow? Those are the things that I feel like we should have to get to and from and make a completely safe, walkable, desirable destination where everyone is going to want to live, work, and play. It's just, I, we together can come up with better ideas than, and to make a future that people are going to start aspiring to. And so that picture is really, the yellow are things that I just proposed. The green are things that are already there, or the green at the very top, that little arch is something that I kept hearing was approved, which I think is on the WNOD path. So maybe one Saturday morning I hop on my bike and I, go up and down the WNOD and I don't even have to get off a bike path. I mean, that's how seamless live, work, and play was meant to be. And so that is challenging us to think outside of what we're given. So if you want to, if I originally wanted a bridge because I was so angry at TF Cornerstone for not coming to the community and saying, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing, and letting us know that they were doing anything until the nth hour. But as I thought about it, and this is what, I would like to see.
So Lori, I think the challenge we have is to how to articulate something that in a smaller capsule, and knowing that that type of vision is probably the vision of many of us. However, that's where it involves many other things that are beyond our study group's control. We can try to find a way to articulate what some of what you described to lead the supervisors and FC.'s future study of Wiehle, and those are our common community goals. And as we talked about a little bit at the last meeting, this is not our study group is not the end of this. Those of us who care about this area need to continue advocating for a lot of what you just described at every point in the future, because there's a lot more decision-making places for those type of things to eventually come together. So the challenge we have here as a group is we have been asked some very specific questions to give a response to, and then the idea with the format of the questions, at least the draft questions, will allow us to individually articulate some of those different ideas that we might have, to hopefully then start pushing those ideas at the next steps of the process.
So this would be kind of a straw poll then. My vote would be to put the money towards an integrated, completed system that works with a tunnel. So we have tunnels all over Reston. That is my feeling. I would want no crosswalk. I don't want to impede traffic. Only that one crosswalk that's been proposed. I know it would inconvenience the homeowners at TF Cornerstone, but that would be unless there was a tunnel.
Okay, so I guess let's hear from some others.
Yeah, let's go around and do a straw poll.
Let me, I guess so. We're on number one, question number one. Is that?
What is question number one?
Well, question number one is, do you support the installation of the crosswalk with pedestrian and traffic signals across Wiehle Avenue at the Dulles Toll Road ramp?
Are we asking what our answer is to that, or are we asking, is that question sufficient?
That is why I was trying to go to every individual person to see if the question itself was appropriate, and then see if people had an opinion on how to improve or better that, to get that type of answer, or to get that question answered.
Of course, it's going to have traffic signals.
Yeah.
So you could cut that language too. It's just, do you want the crosswalk at Wiehle at the Dulles Toll Road?
Yeah, I think that the idea of the traffic signal was it's more the proper pedestrian signals, which does not exist today.
Rob, it's Maurice. Just
Yes,
simply
Maurice.
say, do you support the installation of an at-grade crosswalk across Wiehle Avenue at the Dulles Toll Road ramps? At-grade crosswalk.
Perfect.
Do you have any more comments on question number 1? Let's just work on one question at a time.
One question on the crosswalk. So I don't, I know there's been a lot of strong opinions about the kind of holding area or the pork chop on the western side of Wiehle. And I don't know if we want to ask people, if there is a crosswalk, would you prefer it go straight across without that? Because that is an option, and that was what we first proposed to both FC.dot and VDOT. There's an impact on traffic there. So the vehicular traffic works better with the pork chop. The pedestrian traffic works better without it. And I think it'd be interesting to kind of get a opinion from the group on what the preference is, if there is a crosswalk that will exist.
So Ken, I'm going to get Maurice has his hand up. I'm going to get to him in a second. But Ken, the one problem we have with that is VDOT will have some very specific opinions and dialogue about that. And since it's in there right away, while we can opine or have a preference, which I personally have all kind of preferences for those pork chop islands as a biker, but that's going to be hard for this group to get that detailed in discussion, I think, to weigh in.
Yeah, no, I think it would be interesting for VDOT. I don't think anything comes of it, but I think it would be interesting for VDOT to hear that answer.
I understand.
Yeah.
Let me go to Maurice here.
Well, I just think we ought to keep it simple. As Fionia said earlier, we're in a concept stage here. Do you support an at-grade crossing, period? Pork chops should not be part of the discussion at this point. It's concept.
Rob, if I may, I'm not sure how to raise my hand on this newfangled contraption right here, but if I can step in real quick, because I look at question 1 and I'm looking down at question 4 where we talk about another mid-grade or a mid-block crossing. Why wouldn't question 1 really just say, do you support an additional pedestrian crosswalk between Sunrise Valley and the Dulles Toll Road across Wiehle Avenue? And then that leaves yourself open for the mid-block crossing, the one at the ramps, wherever it may be, whether it be above grade, below grade. Do you support an additional crossing?
So Dave, the reason it's structured that way is the mid-block crossing is actually was really considered an alternative. The at-grade crossing at Wiehle and the toll road is on the application, and it's on the applicant's plan as is. To me, they are two separate issues. Quite frankly, I think it would be hard to get the mid-block crossing even approved, but that's a whole another matter.
May I ask a question? This is Tammy.
Sure.
To FC.dot, and well, actually, no, to Ken and Brian. Is it correct, or am I again having flawed memory, that the bridge or tunnel option are triggered by your building your huge glass residential tower and getting your first permit to occupy. But the on-grade crossing is what you are required to do the instant you start with any new construction on your entire parcel. Is that yes or no? Can you explain that? In other words, you have
I
to
don't
do.
know if you know, Brian, I don't have them memorized. I do know that the bridge or tunnel option is triggered by, you're correct there, that that's on the timing of building C. I don't off the top of my head recall when the crosswalk gets put in, Brian. I don't know if you do.
But they're two separate things, right?
They are two separate things.
Yeah, that you can't just do nothing and build your office building that's on the corner of Sunrise and Wiehle, and then your condo building that's fronts on Sunrise. You have to
I think
do.
our first statement is about that thick. So there's lots of things we have to do.
Okay, but I'm talking about crossing Wiehle.
Yeah,
What are your, is that a requirement? Brian, do you know?
Sorry, I was on mute, and I'm going to pull up the proffers to answer your question specifically, Tammy. So apologize, I don't have it open already. I will pull it up, but the other thing to keep in mind is the crosswalk at the Sunrise Valley Drive intersection will be part of the overall improvements for that intersection. That
Correct.
I believe, I will check, but I believe is before the issuance of a RUP or non-RUP, an occupancy permit for any portion of the development. That part is up front. So there will be a crossing at Wiehle or across Wiehle, but it will be at Sunrise Valley Drive. The other crosswalk, the bridge or contribution of an alternative or construction of an alternative is, as Ken said, timed to the occupancy of the big apartment building. I will check right now on the timing for the at-grade crosswalk at the toll road ramps, and I will raise my hand and answer that question.
Thank you. And my memory comes from what you presented at resident planning and zoning. So I believe that on-grade crosswalk was something you were hot to have because it would give you visibility, and you were going to have a big canopy to show that you existed and had that corner park, and it was part of your marketing. So I believe that was separate and apart from the bridge/tunnel options. So that's where I'm getting my information, but please do check and let us know.
Yep, absolutely.
I apologize for barging in, but Jose, when you get a moment, can you check your chat? I'm getting emails from people who want to get on, and I was hoping you could help. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I don't see anybody's hand raised in the participants, but
And
Jennifer, are you talking about people trying to get in on the meeting?
That's what it sounded
Yes.
like, Rob.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so we have Sarah. Just want to make a comment. Sarah, you're unmuted. She is unmuted. I know, I think Fanula also wanted to make a comment. I'll leave Sarah unmuted, and I'll try to work with her to get her audio.
Hi, this is Fanula. On the question about question one, I'd like to contribute. First, I don't think we should be jumping into question one or any of the questions without a paragraph in front of them all. We should say, here are the options that are being considered. They should be laid out and defined at the top. And actually, if there's any variations, if there's any, like that question about the is the mid-block part of this, like none of those things should be coming up. It should be all defined in this paragraph at the start. If we have a graphic, the graphic should be attached to that definition. And then the exact same language that's in that pre-paragraph be carried through the whole survey so everyone understands what's being asked about. So that would be the first thing. And I thought the contribution about the at-grade crosswalk, that's a very, good, clear term. It's telling us where the, some information, like make sure we have good information like that clearly defines what the thing is. And then for question 1, when I come to that question, I'm given the options, yes, no, abstain. Well, actually, I want to give a different answer, which is it depends. And maybe it depends is a valuable option to include because it could be included as a open-ended question. And I would click, it depends, and then I would write something in there, and that can be gathered up. We've heard people say, well, pork chop, blah, blah. That's where we would put those little things where we indicate what it depends on. And then we gather all of that as part of the response. We don't have to present that to the, at the other end, but it's valuable information from the group because I can't answer yes or no because that's a complicated design question, and I don't want to be supporting something that I wouldn't support design-wise. So to me, it has to be it depends. So just carrying language very clearly through the whole thing. So we're very clear each time, this is what we're being asked about, and this is it defined.
Thanks, Fionnuala. I do want to clarify. So is the idea behind the opening paragraph that you're suggesting for the benefit of this group or for the benefit of others who are seeing the results of the survey?
It's everybody. I don't think we can do a survey without it. Like, we have to say what the definitions are. Like, I don't think you jump into a survey like this without it being clear at the start. Here's what we're being asked about, and then ask the questions. And just be very careful about carrying our language all the way through. And yes, it's used both for us and for the people we're communicating with afterwards. Otherwise, who knows what we're each answering to? It's whatever's in our mind about what the question is. And I don't think it's unusual for a survey, of this type to do that.
No, I don't think so either. I think that's a great suggestion. And a brief summary, and I think pictures are really helpful. And I love the idea of carrying the same wording through. I think we tried to do that, but just to make sure that we do that. I would wonder, whether or not question 1, changing the abstain to the it depends, if that doesn't, it's not just 4 questions we have here. The last question, if you don't mind scrolling up a bit, Jose, is, just a comment section. I would have chosen number 1 to have a crosswalk that had X, Y, and Z on it, but blah, and that's, I think, where we wanted to capture that. We wanted to get a strong feeling pro or con on certain things, and then question 5 was meant to capture any nuances. So
But
how do you feel about that?
yeah, there's no such thing for me as a strong feeling pro or con to that question. The answer is it depends. I can't answer that question as it's written because it depends.
Okay.
Like that, to me, that's a 4th answer that's missing.
Do we
Like,
have,
maybe I love pedestrian crossings, but it depends on a lot of things, so I can't say yes without either more being told to me, which is not there, or me being able to tell it back. Like, it's one or the other. Otherwise I can't answer it. And I don't want to abstain. I want to give input. So, and that would be the place. That's the place to capture it. Not later when I may have forgotten because I've had 20 other questions. And now it's collected together with the other information because it's part of that.
Right. Well, this is only 5 questions. We are trying to keep it very succinct. But I see Jennifer's hand is up. Is there anybody else's hand that's up? Or is that? Because if
Jennifer's hand is up on the chat here.
Okay, no, she did not mean to do that.
I did mean to do it because I'm still going back to my original comment because it makes a difference as to how I give input to the survey. Is this a straw poll survey where we are trying as a group to get a feel for where people are leaning? Or is this the survey in which we're trying to develop our final recommendation to Walter?
So the whole goal here, Jennifer, is to come up with the questions that are our final questions that goes to Walter. The idea of a straw poll was just taking these draft of the questions and seeing if they're getting and honing in on the right on the on the right type of question, and are they being formulated the same way. So yes, this is the goal, is to try to get these questions as our final questions.
So this is both. So we're doing a straw poll and we're doing a final poll, and it's going to be the same survey instrument.
Yeah, I think you're getting hung up over the word straw poll. The idea of a straw poll was just to test the waters of the draft questions that are going to be ultimately the questions that go to Walter.
My understanding is what we agreed to last time was we wanted as a group to get a feeling for, after months of hearing presentations and studying, how we were feeling so that we could decide how to best explore next options for discussions. That's what I thought that we agreed to.
That's what I
And
remember, and that's what I heard.
I agree.
Robin, Jennifer, and Robin Burdette has a hand raised. She's attending. I'm going to unmute her now.
Thanks.
Hi there. I'm sorry I'm late to the party on this, but I'm wondering if we should be focusing more, if we're conducting straw polls or a poll of any kind, on the impacted parties. Those are the ones that of us that live in the area of the developments that are happening, that are going to be impacted by the traffic changes that will be happening with the above grade crossing versus the tunnel. So if we're actually looking at who is going to be benefiting, and I loved Lori's story because I could see every aspect of that story, but I just want to know if we should be looking more at the impacted owners in the area than a casual straw poll, where a lot of us, until Jennifer wonderfully sent out the link tonight, I had no idea. Just throwing that out there.
Tammy, you'd like to comment? Tammy, I think you're on mute.
Robin, we're past that. Walter, we intrinsically acknowledge that some of the people impacted haven't even moved to Reston yet, and they would be people that will be living in the TSA in some form. There are members representing your neighborhood on the task force. There are builders, on the group, voting members of the group. There are, I'm of the community long-term and know a lot about stuff from being on the P&Z and studying it forever. So we have a variety of opinions, including the owners, the attorneys, etc. So to your worry, yes, you are represented by your, the people here that are in your neighborhood, as you absolutely 1000% should be. But we need to have a smaller group to be able to discuss, as we're having the problem now with, 21 panelists. If we have everybody that isn't informed and hasn't been here for the weeks we've been doing this, then we will never get done by August. And that is our drop dead date. So I'm not meaning to insult you, but that is in reality our structure. Thank you.
think Steve
Okay.
Cherney had a hand, Rob,
All
or
right,
maybe it
Steve.
maybe it wasn't a hand.
No, I actually, I didn't have my hand up,
Okay.
Sorry about that, Steve.
but I would like to comment at some point, once we get past this. You know, my feeling as to what we should do tonight is have a straw poll that merely takes the committee's temperature as to whether they support a bridge at any location, a tunnel, or an grade crossing.
Thanks, Steve.
I have a point of clarification. Does a straw poll have to be this list of questions? Or can a straw poll be just going around and listening to each person just discuss their preferences?
Yeah, Lori, I think that's a great question. Let's take this next remaining hour or slightly less than an hour and just try to do that. And if people can just appreciate the time that we have and try to be as succinct as you can, but just try to reflect where you believe you are in the process of these questions were there to help answer what some of the specifics that were in the proffer that we have to come up with answers. But if you put that aside for now and just reflect on, where you think you are with the information you've been provided, you want to try that? Okay.
I think that's a good idea, Rob.
I think that's the way to go, Rob.
I think Maurice had a hand.
Okay, you've all already heard me.
I was gonna go first. Can I go
Okay,
first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm in favor of an underpass. I don't like the word tunnel, an underpass. I'm not in favor of an at-grade crossing with or without pork chops. Furthermore, I believe the developer should be required to improve the intersection, the existing intersection of Sunrise Valley Drive and Wiehle with 3 crosswalks, not 2 as proposed. They do not have a crosswalk on the east side going toward North Reston. So if I wanted to go to Lake Fairfax Park, I'm going to have to cross Wiehle farther down the line, either on the whatever. I want a full intersection there, not 2, but 3 crosswalks at the dead end of Wiehle at Sunrise Valley. That's it.
Thank you, Maurice.
So that's a great example, Maurice, of being succinct and telling us exactly what you're looking for. I think that's exactly the manner that we're trying to get at. How about Michelle Kimmel?
I agree completely with Maurice.
Wow, great.
I see Mike McDermott has a
Mike
physical hand.
Yep, Mike McDermott.
I agree with Maurice. Period.
Excellent. Is it Shamila? Is that a county person?
Yeah, she's my
Yeah.
friendly staff aide at the Hunter Mill Supervisor's
All right,
office.
right. So how about Steve Cern?
Yeah, that's Shamli.
Yeah, I oppose any bridge option and I oppose an underpass option. For this reason, first of all, neither of them would work very well, particularly the bridges. And secondly, if one of those options were to be recommended, 1.5, 1.6 million isn't going to get us very far, particularly with the underpass. It would require taxpayers' dollars to subsidize it. Now, I'm no fiscal conservative by any means, but I think that would be very wasteful of a scarce public resource. If any funding out of the Fairfax County budget or the VDOT budget could be found to build a grade separated pedestrian crossing, it should be done at Reston Parkway between the toll road and Sunrise Valley, where many more people would use it. An investment in a large amount of public money in a grade separated crossing at Wiehle would serve only a handful of people. It would serve the people that would live in the residential building. That's not very many people, and it would be a wasteful use of public dollars to serve a small number of people there, period. So therefore, I favor enhanced Maurice's position on very enhanced, safe crossings at Sunrise Valley Drive. And I'm still not, I've been told that the continuous right turn lanes are going to be eliminated. But in a sense, I'll believe it when I see it, unless anybody on this call from FC can actually, state for certain that those continuous rights are going to be eliminated. As to a crossing near the ramps, I think it's a tricky area, and I do have some concerns as to whether a safe at-grade crossing could be placed there. But I'm open, I would call myself neutral on that at this point. I'd like to hear more. That's it.
Thanks, Steve. Excellent. Tammy Petrine.
I am waiting to find out what is in the proffer because I do believe that an at-grade crossing was assumed at the toll road. I do not think that is safe. I absolutely would love an enhanced Sunrise Valley Wiehle. I am going to abstain on other choices until I hear a little bit more. I'm extremely concerned that this size of a project from Cornerstone would be satisfied with a $1.6 million proffer for something, the connectivity, which their development depends on, because they are on the opposite side of the street from Metro, and from all of Comstock's commercial. They're not planning to have a lot of commercial themselves, so they must serve the future residents that they're bringing in, as well as their office staff. And also want to point out the Comstock, when they start on their west side of this intersection, Wiehle, have an equal responsibility for connectivity. So this is we're voting on what Cornerstone's responsibility is, but Comstock will be a player in this very shortly. So that is my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. All right, let me go to
Rob.
Yes.
If I may jump in, I had put it in the chat to everybody, but Tammy, to confirm, you were correct. Our collective memory was correct, but just to confirm, it's in the chat also. But the crosswalk at Sunrise Valley Drive across Wiehle is required prior to the first RUP or non-RUP for the overall development. So that's before any occupancy. The crosswalk at the toll road ramps across Wiehle, the at-grade crosswalk per the proffers, would be required prior to the first RUP for building C, which is the high-rise apartment building. Keep in mind that, as you noted, there have been concerns about that crosswalk. Obviously, that's been discussed a lot at this group, and it was discussed a fair amount during the rezoning application, as everybody knows. And so that crosswalk at the toll road ramps is part of this study group's review, and ultimately is subject to a recommendation from this group and approval by the board. So per the proffers, we're required to provide that crosswalk, subject to getting it approved by VDOT, and they've already seen it as part of the rezoning application, but it is subject ultimately to the board's approval as part of this process.
Thank you, Brian. Tammy, do you want to?
Yeah, so I do have, so if you're doing an on-grade crosswalk right there, Where did the bridges come from that are right over it? It seems like a redundant proffer.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but there was concern on the part of the community that the at-grade crosswalk would not be a desirable option and that there needed to be pedestrian access across Wiehle, and that would be potentially in the form of one of the three bridges or an alternative, which is also provided for in the proffer on a cost equivalent alternative. So that was sort of where that came from.
Okay, so it's an either or. So we have three bridges, an on-grade at Wiehle, or a contribution to an underpass. Is that
Well,
accurate?
The at-grade crosswalk at Wiehle, across Wiehle at the toll road ramps, is part of this study process and is subject to the recommendation of the study group and approval by the Board of Supervisors. But it is independent from the bridge or an alternative to the bridge. So it could be that the task force recommends and the board ultimately approves one of the three bridge options and the crosswalk at grade, or one of the three bridge options, but not the crosswalk at grade, or an alternative such as an underpass with the crosswalk at grade or an underpass without the crosswalk at grade. Those are all on the table.
Thank you, Brian. That helps
Sure.
immensely. Thank you.
Thanks. Let me go next to Bruce Wright, and then after that, Jay Monroe.
All right, thanks, Rob. I would like to be like Maurice, but I'm going to be a little bit more verbose. I really do like Maurice's idea about the crosswalk on the east side. I think that's really important, and I think it's part of the whole idea of getting across Wiehle and beyond. So I support that. You know, conceptually, I like the idea of an underpass, and I like what Lori's vision entailed, but you know, most of our underpasses in Reston now are relatively short. They just go under the road, and there's not a long lead up to it. My impression of the underpass near the toll road would be fairly long. You would start further back on the east side and go quite a ways beyond Wiehle on the west side, and to just cross the street, you'd have to go a long ways in either direction. If there were a way to have a very short underpass, I'd support it, but I also agree with Steve that I don't think there's nearly enough money to build it. So it would take a lot. I mean, if it were inexpensive and could be made short, I would support it. Otherwise, I don't think it'll work. I don't support any of the bridge options. I do support a crosswalk at the toll road, and people have said they don't think it's safe. Well, I think you can engineer a safe crosswalk at the toll road. You know, we have very smart engineers. There's a lot of new design ideas from Europe and through NACTO and other organizations, and I think you could make that a safe crossing. And the more crossings, I think, the better. We don't want traffic flying through there like it is now. So I think that could be made safe. And just one other comment. I live across the lake near the high school, and I walk across Wiehle every day just about these days. And I cross at mid-block. I don't go up to the intersection because that free-flowing right. And so I lost the train of thought about why I was going there, but I think having two crosswalks there would be very beneficial. And if I remember what I was going to say leading up to that short story I told, I will get back to you. But yeah, those are my. I know what it was. I crossed that road and I noticed that northbound traffic. There are three lanes through from Sunrise Valley to Sunset Hills. The far right lane is a right turn lane when you get to Sunset Hills. Almost no one uses that lane, and I think you could narrow that road and even and make that crosswalk safer. You could narrow it at the toll road to two lanes because people are using just those two lanes and then the left turn lanes. So anyway, that's an idea I wanted to throw out there. So I think that's it for now. Thanks, Rob. I think you're muted, Rob.
Okay, thank you. Bruce. Jay Monroe.
Okay, so I would say that all things being equal, I would love the tunnel. But I do think that it'll probably come up with an outrageous price tag, and it's probably not worth it for the residents of that area. I don't think that too many people are going to use it other than the residents of that area. Because like I live on the south side of Sunrise Valley at Wiehle, and we're just gonna walk down and go directly across at the crosswalk and be on the west side of Wiehle instantly. So we'll never use a tunnel or a bridge. I don't really like the bridge options, so I would probably prefer that the money be spent on enhancing the crosswalk or enhancing the lights at Sunrise and Wheelie, and making a good crosswalk at the Dulles Toll Road ramp at grade. That's it.
Thank you, Jay. Love your background, by the way.
Well, I can make it really fancy if you want.
That's all right. All right. How about Jennifer? Jennifer, I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I have a
No worries.
3-year-old, so she demands some attention at some point in the evening. I generally agree with Maurice that an underpass would be preferred. I think that we need to think about the development that could potentially occur east of Campus Commons that we do not know about yet, but I think that it's certainly a possibility considering some of the other roads like the Soapstone overpass and some of the some of the other things that are in the transportation plan. I do think that a crosswalk at the toll road is not doable, but that's because I've read up on it. I've talked to the VDOT people. I've seen the memos they've written, and I think that besides VDOT, we have some other barriers to overcome with beyond just VDOT having to approve something like that. But I strongly, and this is not going to come to a surprise to everyone, encourage us to go beyond recommending, one of the options that we've already considered, and really give Walter and the community a product that it envisions what a walkable Wheelie should look like. And I think that we owe it to the community to make that known and allow some of the work that we've done in truly studying this intersection to be out in the public realm for future meetings.
Thank you, Jennifer. Julie Blitzer? Go ahead, Julie. Oh, I think you're muted. While we're waiting on Julie, let's how about let's go to Lori.
Julie just said that she is in a noisy place, so she doesn't have a comment this time around.
Thank you.
So, thank you. It was really good to listen to people's concerns and listen to different points of view. I guess when I look at a tunnel, it's a $20 million tunnel. $10 million is probably is what the consultant came back with, but then we have no idea what's underneath Wheelie, and it would probably end up being a $20 million tunnel. And it is a lot of money. But when I look at the crosswalk, an at-grade crosswalk, I just imagine my daughter with her stroller and her 2-year-old trying to get across Wiehle and being hit by one of the new 6,400 cars that are going to be coming out of just TF Cornerstone's one set of buildings over there. Their new property, when it's fully built, the traffic study had 6,400 cars in a 24-hour period coming in and out of that property. So there are going to be so many more cars than Stephen or Bruce could imagine, which is why we need something that is going to take care of the people here. And what is the cost of that life? If it's your grandchild, what is that cost? And to me, we're not just building something so people can get through a spot. The tunnel might be long, but what if the tunnel is well lit? What if it's got vendors who are allowed to be on either side of it? What if, we just need to be more creative and be more collaborative and figure out what legacy are we going to leave the next generation, because whatever we build is not going to be there and gone. And so for me, the tunnel is the only way to, I don't know how to put a price on my grandchild. So I'm really happy with a $10 million tunnel that might turn into a $20 million tunnel. And I don't support a crosswalk at all because I just can see the traffic that we have today, and that right turn lane is really great. And every time I go through it, I'm like, oh, thank God it hasn't happened yet. But when it happens, there's going to be so many cars. So we have to leapfrog from what we see. When you say, I pass that intersection every day, you can't imagine it the way it is today. We're building the future. We're building this high rise, and the number of cars that is just going to come out of that one single quadrant, not even the Comstock quadrant, not even the next there's just so much more being built that if we only look at what's happening today, we are not doing our job. We're not holding ourselves accountable for what we were tasked to do. Yes, it's a lot of money. I would still do it. And I would want to bring the developers together to even do more, to make, to incentivize the builders to work together to, Thursday night at the park, that's movie night at TF Cornerstone. Everybody's got to meet there. And then, Wednesday night, it's an art show in the Comstock place. And that brings people back and forth and just makes that whole place flourish. And, Sunday or Saturday morning, the preschool is all going to meet and plant bulbs in a certain part of, the places that are being built. I forget what that's called, Midtown. I want to see further than today and further than what we see today. So that's my straw poll.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, I do want to give the opportunity for Maggie Parker if she wants to have a comment. Maggie, do you care to weigh in on this? Maggie's muted at the moment. And if Maggie's not available, Dave Bryant, would you care to share an opinion you have, or?
Share my opinion? Goodness gracious. I listened to quite a few good comments made. And I know that Bruce Wright and I has had our differences over the years, but I got to tell you, some of the ideas that I heard from him this evening, I'm 100% arm in arm with him. These roads need to be narrowed up. We are transitioning from a suburban environment to an urban environment, whether you like it or not. When we all agreed to bring Metro to Reston, we agreed to go from a suburban environment to an urban environment. Suburban environments do not include wide lanes. They do not include long radius, high-speed turns. They require people to come to a complete stop to make a right turn. Get rid of the free flow right turns, slow people down. As far as the bridges go, I honestly, Comstock can't support any of the bridges that include the long ramps because they're just not, it's a waste of money. They're not going to get used. You're talking about ramps that are probably 1,000 feet to a quarter mile long to get from the street up on top of the bridge to come back down. So somebody's got to walk a half a mile out of their way. I've heard VDOT say that they won't accept the elevators. Yeah, that's probably true. But I mean, that could be done with a third-party agreement between the county, VDOT, and the association, whoever's going to end up maintaining these things. I know VDOT doesn't want to maintain them, but will the county or the association maintain them if they had the opportunity to? So, and the pedestrian underpass, I honestly believe it would be very underutilized. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Dave. Ken, do you want to weigh in here at all, or?
I don't think I'll weigh in on, what the appropriate method of crossing Wiehle is, but I would like to kind of make a statement that I think many of you have heard, but probably many of you have not, which is, I think as Lori described the neighborhood and what the goal should be in terms of the north-south connectivity and, being able to flow from one side to the other, I wholeheartedly agreed with everything she said. As we look at, how you create a neighborhood and how you create that experience, I feel very strongly that, Wiehle is a challenge. It's was something historically and wants to be something else in the future. I feel very passionately that if we treat it like a river and how we get across it, that is how it's going to function for the next 50 years. So, I won't give an opinion on how you get across it, but I would kind of put that nugget in everyone's mind.
Thank you, Ken. I think I've gotten everybody except myself.
No, this is Fanula. I wasn't called upon.
Oh, you're right, Fanula. I apologize. Yes, please.
Yes, sorry, I'd like to participate too. The question was, what were our preferences? I would not prefer the overpasses. I think the nature of the design will cause all sorts of out-of-way travel and people won't use them, and that's what happens typically with those sort of designs. I would like the underpass, particularly, if it's less out of way. I'm hoping, more design effort would go into that. The reason I would like that is that provides an option to get across the street where you won't get killed. That's what the huge benefit, even if it's a small number of people, it's far and away a safer option than a pedestrian crossing where you do risk getting killed. Now, Bruce brought up, the original underpasses were small, short, and we can't have those now because they were built, at a time where you didn't have to meet ADA requirements and stuff like that. However, I would suggest that we have a lot more and are probably looking forward to a lot more wheeled movement going forward. People are moving on wheeled devices, all sorts of personal mobility wheeled devices. People are already doing that in Reston, assisted wheeled personal devices. So an underpass would benefit those users. And I think you would see a lot more of that in the future. But I also support a pedestrian crossing. And however, it's a qualified support. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's either in the form that we saw it or at the point where we saw it. You know, a pedestrian crossing, I would like a lot of effort to be put into it being the safest point and incorporate all the design improvements that can make it safe. And the reason I support that is because people will cross at grade. No matter what option is put there, people are going to cut because that is the shortest route to the station and to that area. So I think we have to recognize people's behavior and design as safe improvements as we can for those people.
Thank you, Finola. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to miss you. I had to scroll down to my screen was too small.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
Sarah, she's an attendee. She's unable to comment, but she wanted to share some thoughts with the group, if that's okay. So she says, hi, everyone. I wanted to add, in talking extensively with RA during the approval stage, I was told that an underpass is not possible due to the distance required to construct one. I feel that Wiehle and Sunrise Valley are too highly trafficked to be safe. I would advocate for 2 crossings across Sunrise Valley, one closer to Great Meadow Drive and the other closer to South Lakes. Of course, this would require assisted signals. Regarding passage of new residents from the Cornerstone development across Wiehle, safe passage can be achieved with a bridge during congestion and crosswalk when not as highly congested. Those were Sarah's comments.
Okay. So let me just give my comment here. And you know, I have the benefit of being a designer, and I've dealt with this a little bit in urban settings, like Dave Bryant had kind of mentioned. Whether we like it or not, I think our little pocket of Reston in this area it will become more urban than suburban, and because of that, I'm looking at every intersection from Sunrise Valley Drive the whole way down to Isaac Newton Square, and I try to envision what the whole corridor will look like and what it'll need to be like. And I envision a multimodal approach where you have the bikers and scooters and pedestrians and cars all having to be together with enhanced streetscapes, narrow lanes, more traffic calming measures that help that will slow the traffic down, and it's been proven to work. And I know some people doubt the idea of narrowing lanes, but trust me, it really does allow people to then go slower, and eliminating these free flow right turn lanes is an absolute, and getting rid of some of those islands. It all will come together to help create a safer pedestrian realm for everybody along the entire corridor. And then in doing so, you would have then safe at-grade crossings that you would create at every step of the way. I mean, probably one of the busiest intersections of this corridor is going to be Reston Station Boulevard and Wiehle Avenue. And so to put a tunnel idea at the toll road in Wiehle, when we're going to have other intersections that are probably going to be even more populated, I'm just afraid that might be not looking at the problem holistically on all sides and at all crossings throughout the entire corridor. So we've seen it done in other areas of the country. I think it could be easily done here, but it takes a comprehensive look and approach, and this is where FCDOT's consultants are going to really have to put their heads together. And I think it really takes someone to show us on a map, show us on a drawing, show us how this can all be done for us all to really get the vision of the area. And I honestly think that vision will go in line with a lot of what you described and what you're hoping will happen in the area. And so to summarize, it's safer at-grade crossings and a multimodal approach with some traffic calming. Yes, Maurice.
Just a comment, Rob. I think there's a big difference between a underpass in the location we're talking about tonight and Reston Station. The difference is you've got neighborhoods that are south and east of the Cornerstone development, like where I live in Harborside Cluster, all those along Upper Lake Drive and beyond, would want to go to the Metro or go to the Comstock development or go to Cornerstone and shop, go to a restaurant. All of those people are going to be flowing toward the Metro station. That's why a tunnel there is justified. Whereas at Reston Station, you've got the midline development, and that's pretty much it. So I think population wise, we've got many more people in southeastern Reston that would use this tunnel that and need access to Cornerstone, Comstock, and Metro versus Reston Station, which is the residential there is going to be very, very limited compared to all of southeastern Reston. That's my comment.
Yeah, thanks, Maurice. That was a good comment. There is a lot of density though coming beyond just midline, so keep that in mind for that other area. But no, I appreciate the comment.
Rob, do we have just a point of information for people? Do we have a map at all of that we can provide to folks of what kind of the percentages of living quarters versus office quarters versus retail, just general percentages in each of those spaces, so we get an idea of, because that would also help with somebody said, I just made up that we would be walking through the tunnel to go get, or I'd be buying a new blouse at Comstock's new retail area. But that's the kind of information, I was just wondering how that would be found.
Yeah, Lori, my firm, we looked at this for the purposes of the beginning of this study group, and I don't think it was a drawing that was ever represented in any forum. I could dig that out. We tried to look at, I think, a half-mile radius from the metro station on the south side of the toll road and tried to guesstimate as to the breakdown of I don't know how we did it, population, or just you could only just base it on the homes or the businesses that were there. I'll have to pull that out and look at it. But I know what you're asking for.
Yeah, I guess I would be interested on both sides, not just on the south side of
Yeah, we definitely did do it for the north side because it was ever changing.
Yeah.
So we have just about 12 minutes left tonight, and I tell you, this was very, I think, constructive. I think when you just look at the summary of what people said, I think you can start to formulate at least an idea of the group, and I don't want to shortchange anybody's comment. But like it just appeared like the bridge options that I don't know if there was anybody really, maybe one person in favor of even one of the bridge options or a hybrid of it, versus the underpass is certainly, I think, a more heavier weighted favorite. And then there's certainly options that people talked about at an at-grade situation. It sounded like overwhelmingly people definitely want that Sunrise Valley, Wiehle Avenue intersection more greatly improved than what's even been proposed. And so this was, I think, very helpful. We're starting to formulate a direction here, and now maybe we can then help to think how we're gonna then bring it together in a way that's constructive for those who are going to take our information and run with it, and also helps answer those proffers, which I think it will. I think ultimately it will come right out and kind of directly or indirectly answer what we needed to answer.
Hey, Rob,
Yeah.
I think we have the two attendee hands. Maybe Fanula has a new hand, but I'll start with Robin first. If that's okay.
Yes.
So I really appreciate the fact that you guys are looking at the dynamic of what the future Reston actually metro stops are going to be. First, we're here at Wiehle, and then you go to the Reston Town Center stop. And as everybody knows, when you have a core, which will be a lot more of the Reston Town Center stop because it's going to have the Wegmans and everything else there, everything now becomes a feeder. Right now, we are it. And apparently until sometime spring, fingers crossed, of 2022, we will still be it. So as you're thinking future wise, you need to still think that 2022 Reston Town Center stop is going to be a major stop. It's just like the roads that we're putting over, the over the toll road that are going to make a difference in traffic flow. We need to be evaluating what that second stop, third stop into Herndon are going to do to us. It's not only about what we're building, but it's about the future. And I completely understand and support the underground tunnel and what Maurice said. But in the same instance, I actually want to know, has anybody ever talked to Metro about supporting any above grade, not at grade, above grade systems in this area?
So Robin, I don't believe Metro has been involved in this discussion since it's kind of out of their purview, to my knowledge.
Guys, we only have 12 minutes. I'm seeing 8:48, right? Or 8:49. We had one more comment from someone who has not spoken before. Is it a participant or a panel?
I noticed through the chat, I think John Farrell was sending me questions, and I think I missed him, but I'm happy to unmute him and he can ask his questions.
Okay, and then we're going to stop him promptly. So let's let him know that.
Let me
John,
just mention, Bruce Wright has his hand up, I believe, unless he took it down. Well, now it's back up. So
John,
let's see if John can weigh in.
No, I'm fine. I've put my questions in the chat and people can look at them as they need to. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Bruce?
I do have a very quick comment, Laurie. I'll be very brief.
Yes, sir.
It would be nice to look in detail at what a crosswalk at the toll road would look like. We did see a pretty good presentation on it, but I think there's a lot of concerns people have, and it'd be nice to take a little bit longer look maybe and look at crossing times and so on. The other comment is Lori showed a underpass mid-block, I think, and I don't think we've looked at that at all. And so I'm wondering if that's at all feasible. So that's kind of a question to Lori. And with that, I'll stop.
That was just notional. I just knew that I am a visual person and I needed to see what the future would look like. And I just notionally threw things down. I don't know the answer to what a mid-block, I have no idea. I was just notionally throwing things.
Thanks.
This is Tammy. I'd like to jump in on that. When we took our walkabout there, wasn't the tunnel about mid-block?
That's what
was absolutely not up by the toll road, because that would have destroyed the corner park with all the tiers. So it was definitely not at close to the on-grade crosswalk at the intersection of Wiehle. So it was mid-block. So that's exactly where the tunnel was.
Well, maybe as part of narrowing this down, we'll pursue that as well at a future meeting. All right, thanks.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up. So a couple of things. I want to wrap this meeting up, but I don't want to lose these gems and nuggets that we have gathered here tonight. So number one, the chat, I'm sorry, I can't read it. right now. I just had cataract surgery, and so I want to read this, what is in the chat. And I'm wondering, Jose, if you can scoop up those comments and share that with the team here so that we can all read those at our leisure. Also, um, I think we need a quick summary of what transpired here this evening. Um, Rob, I'm wondering if you seem like you were taking good notes. I also have some notes. Maybe you and I together could put something, a summary of what we talked about here to the group. And maybe we could do that by the end of next week. And then it seems like we have three things left on the agenda. We sort of have done our straw poll. Is that okay with you, Jennifer? You're comfortable with what we went through tonight?
Yeah, thank you so much. I am very excited, I think, by the straw poll. And I think that we actually probably got a lot more out of the straw poll than we would have out of a formal poll. And I think we have a lot we can use to build on, because there's some synergies. So I would encourage the group to build on the synergies we just found tonight in a future meeting.
So I guess that's my next question. And maybe we could do it with a show of hands if, or you can send, or we can send out agenda, options, and people can vote on the agenda for next month. But one of the options is just to reimagine, the corridor. And I imagine that would require everybody to participate and to bring ideas to it. And maybe Rob can get us some data on where retail is and that kind of information, or Brian, if you have that information. And we could just do one session where we just imagine and we just collaborate and we just put together the best ideas, and you bring, examples of things you've seen, and just send it all to Jose in advance. Um, and then we do have to do our recommendations, and we do have to kind of do one last kind of straw poll of, what we have to bring to closure, what we've been asked to do, which was smaller in scope. But this is definitely, if there's a time to chart a new course for the future, I think the time is now to give people at least some kind of roadmap or vision, whether or not it goes that way. And Rob, I'd love to see again, I encourage people to bring pictures or to send pictures to Jose so that we can see, because I'm very bad at anything other than seeing a picture, so I know what I'm looking at. And Brian's version of a bridge and my version of a bridge could be completely different, or a crosswalk that Maurice sees and the crosswalk that I see could be completely different. So some of the things people have explained tonight, we could have a different definition of what those are in our own minds. So Rob, wrap up, comments, 5 minutes.
Yep. No, I think that's a good way to kind of, we'll summarize what we heard tonight. We'll try to send it out in draft, and then everybody can kind of weigh in maybe if we didn't properly articulate a thought or two. But I think this generates some thoughts about how we could maybe move forward with taking everyone's individual ideas and maybe just using them verbatim in some way, or some way to really get that message across. One quick note, Kevin Nelson from VDOT had put in the chat, and he just wanted to emphasize the fact that on the Cornerstone development, there were improvements that are proposed to be made on Wiehle down near Sunrise Valley Drive, lessening some of those lanes and getting rid of some of that movement that exists today that wouldn't be there tomorrow. And that will help in that pedestrian crossing, at least at Sunrise Valley. Just wanted to note that was in the chat.
And we have
Okay.
materials on that. I'm sure that Jose would be happy to give to anybody that kind of show what those improvements are if you're interested.
Right.
Well, I've completely forgotten what they are, so that was a while ago, so I'd love to be refreshed. Sorry. May. Jose, will you give us some dates that for May?
Yeah, I'm happy to send out like a doodle poll. I can pick up some dates and send it to the larger group, but also I can work with you guys.
Okay, super.
I haven't planned that far ahead in my life yet, but
Thank you all so much for tonight. This was just a really great meeting. Thank you.
good night, everyone.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you. Good night.